Hey, what's up, guys? It's Tara coming back at you. Listen, I'm going to be starting a new little series, or just kind of a new little thing that I do, and it's called Lessons from the School of Hard Knocks. I've shared in videos past. You'll continue to hear me sharing stories and just ways in which I've always taken the long way around, and really, I joke around and say that I've graduated at the top of my class when it comes to the School of Hard Knocks, by choice. Some made ignorantly, some made not so ignorantly, but really the stuff that I've gleaned and just sharing lessons I've learned, wisdom I've gleaned, and just, my various experiences that led me to where I am. And that really kind of launched me into what I'm doing now and birthed my purpose. And so going to be starting this series. I'm really excited about it. I'll be throwing these videos out there often. And the structure and kind of what I'm going to do is to go through, because I read quotes, I read little things constantly all the time that have such a deep resonance of truth. However, there's just little things, little points about it that aren't quite accurate, that I feel like just even giving a little bit of clarity on that will bring so much more meaning and make things make a little bit more sense, right? And so the first lesson in the School of Hard Knocks is coming from a quote I came across a couple days ago, but it's one I've seen often, and it reads, "Karma says, sometimes you have to suffer in life, not because you were bad, but because you didn't realize where to stop being good," right? And the underlying message that this is sending is basically, is sometimes when you find yourself in very difficult positions or find yourself in a struggle and a bad outcome, sometimes it's not, because you're a bad person. A lot of times people associate the idea of karma and just karma in general with it being you've put something out bad and you're receiving bad back, right? But that is not what karma is. Karma really follows after many of the principles seen in many different spiritually backed ideologies, different faiths, Christianity, Buddhism, all the way back to, religions, Hermeticism, just stuff back to even the most ancient civilizations. And it really addresses and talks about what is also known in the scientific field as basically the law of cause and effect. So the law of sowing and reaping, do unto others what you'd have them do unto you. All these concepts where there's an association between what it is that you sow out, what it is you put out there, and what you get back. The thing about it is it's not always bad. So that's the first thing we got to deal with. One of my favorite things that I say is that, karma is not a bitch. She's pure mathematics, meaning that it works. It works in a specific way. It works the same for everybody. And it works based on a number of different factors, right? And sometimes I know in my own life, right, I have found myself in really bad positions and experiencing bad karma, not because I'm a bad person, not because I had some bad intention, wrong motive, that some malign character quality or malicious intention at all, right? And that's what this quote's talking about. It's saying, sometimes it's not that you did something wrong, you did something bad, but sometimes it's that you didn't know when to stop being good, right? And the underlying message of this is very, very true, and I love so many aspects about it. But the one thing that really struck me and I feel needs to be addressed and maybe just kind of, explained and opened up, maybe a different perspective given on it, is this, right? There's no such thing as doing too much good. That would be like saying it's too much love. You can never do too much good, right? What needs to be defined or better understood is what good really truly is, what love really truly is, how it moves, how it responds, what is the highest form of unconditional love, right? And pointing out, just even talking about this word good, right? Understanding that good it's a subjective, very subjective term, right? And I'll give you a couple personal examples. I found myself many, many times in a situation where I have remained in a very toxic or dysfunctional situation, with the best of intentions, with truly wanting to help somebody, right? One of the things about me, I'm an extremely intuitive person. It's actually something I consider to be a very profound gift. I can walk into situations, I can read certain things about people. I just have a knowing of very specific details, things going on with them, maybe motivators of behavior, and when I see it, I don't often speak on it, but I will watch and I will observe. And when I see stuff starting to play out and get a confirmation of what I was thinking, what I kind of came up in me is accurate, and I realized that, oh my gosh, what I can tell them, what I can say to them, it can help them, right? And so then I go to say something, I go to talk, I go to address it, right? And the person just doesn't seem to hear me, right? And so I have such a good understanding. I'm able to now understand their behaviors, the way they're responding to me. I'm not viewing it I'm viewing it through this lens now of like, this is what's really going on with them. This is why they're behaving that way. And so what I would do is minimize or dismiss or kind of like, explain away the way the person is acting, the way the person's behaving, what they're actually doing. And I can explain it away and overlook it, right? Forgive it, because I have such a deep understanding of where it's coming from. And what I've done many times is to remain in a situation, continuing to try out of desire to want to help, out of the desire to want to see somebody not have to go through, not keep going the long way around, and having consequences be what teaches someone truth, what's not truth, right? Hard consequences. And my drive and desire and passion behind that, and my ability to understand them on a deeper level, kept me in many situations where I stayed and remained in a very unhealthy, very dysfunctional situation, a relationship, out of my desire to want to help and change and help somebody see, oh my gosh, this is what's going on, this is why you're doing it. Because, for me, I could save you, right? And what ended up happening, and it got exponentially more pronounced as the number of times I went through this cycle and pattern continued, was that what ended up happening is, and what does end up happening is, when you continue to remain and you are telling somebody, you are sharing a truth, right? It doesn't matter. You can have the best of intentions, but what ends up happening if somebody does not hear you, if they can't hear you, right? If they're not listening, if you're not seeing change, if they're telling you, oh yeah, that makes sense, I get it, but then you're watching them still continue to repeat the same behavior, and there's no tangible change, there's no visible change in how they're behaving, and they're continuing to do dysfunctional things, right? Especially if it's impacting you and it's some form of betrayal, or it brings hurt and causes negativity in your life, right? The tendency I always had was just well, I gotta stay harder, I gotta fight harder, right? I gotta drive this in. I'm gonna make them understand, right? I'll give them the answer, then I'll change, right? That's all they gotta do. If they could just hear me, right? But I'm gonna tell you what ended up happening, and it is its own form, and this is what it means, right? When you remain too long, or when you don't know when to stop, what ends up happening is it creates a very, very intense hell in your life. Because what tends to happen is, when you are addressing somebody with something, right? Everybody has past wounds, past traumas. They have stuff going on that is buried in their subconscious mind that they are not consciously aware of, right? And so what happens is, when something in the environment, or something that's said, or something that happens that's similar to something they've experienced in the past, when it happens, it triggers the nervous system, and all of the chemical and signal find is picking up on some pattern. We've seen this before, is being able to perceive something. It's sent up through the brain, through the subconscious mind, and it draws up, it's matching up all these experiences, matching up all this stuff. It's going through the lens, the perception that you have. All the neural networks in your mind are firing, and they're building this thing, right? And then it draws up an emotion in you, right? And so what ends up happening is, when that happens, when you're addressing something, you say something to somebody and they get triggered, and you're trying to speak some truth to them, but you find they're getting more and more defensive. What that's a signal of, what's actually happening within them, is that they don't have a conscious awareness of why or what it is, right? And so what you do is, you continue to tell them, you continue to say this, and it continues triggering them, and they're getting more and more emotional. it's creating more and more chaos in them because you are triggering something within them that's causing internal inconsistency and chaos within them. And when they can't make sense of it, what ends up happening is what everybody does this, is that what they'll seek to do, if they can't explain why am I feeling, if it doesn't make sense, if they can't bring and find understanding and bring their mind back to the state of more internal consistency, you then look for things in the environment to attach it to make sense, so it makes sense, right? And what happens is when you're the person that's constantly there speaking a truth, right, and it's constantly triggering them and they're getting more and more chaotic, it's causing them to be defensive. You can tell it's triggering something in them, but they don't know what it is. What ends up happening is over time, they begin to associate the chaos and all the stuff that's triggered from the subconscious mind, from these past experiences, past relationships, these past wounds that have been built up and repressed and now just exist in the subconscious mind outside of their conscious awareness. What they start doing then is they start associating that chaos, associating the connection, associating all those things that are coming up from past wounds, past relationship, past people in their lives who've come through and have wounded them or hurt them in some way, betrayed them, abandoned them. They're now associating it with you. And the more you try, the more you keep triggering that, the more reinforced that association becomes. And what happens is they end up seeing you, they project all of that, and they end up repainting the truth, repainting who you are with all the colors of all those memories, of all those people, all that hurt. And it creates so much conflict and confusion. But the worst hell that you can live through as an individual who truly has the purest of intention and truly believes you're helping is when the person you feel like you are fighting the hardest for and sacrificing and remaining and enduring for ends up hating you. And they end up seeing you and perceiving you in a way that is so, it aligns with all the people in the past that hurt them, right? And that is a very painful hell to have to live in, and a very hard lesson to learn that took me multiple cycles of trying to do this and having things end the same way for me to like have that moment of like, wait a minute. The more I'm trying to help, the more this person hates me, right? And here's where that definition of good, here's where I was missing. And here's what's missing in that quote. What's missing is understanding what good is. What is unconditional love, right? What does that do? What does that look like? And what that looks like is when you are able to allow another individual to decide, to move, to live, to make decisions without and come to understanding the way that they need to, and trusting that the same way you were able to do that, the same way everything was always being orchestrated, either through people coming into your life and trying to speak truth, or the consequences following because you wouldn't listen or you weren't aware, and then you learned that way, trusting that process, right? And being able to go to an individual and say, give them a couple opportunities, talk to them. The Bible talks about this. There's other holy text that talks about this process of when you go to somebody who you see something where you're speaking some truth, or you're bringing correction to some behavior that you notice, you go to them and you say something to them, and then, you say something again. But at some point, after you said things a couple times and you've noticed it's not being heard, right? That's a lot of times we think that's, well, they're intentionally not listening. Now that we personalize it, and now they're intentionally not hearing us because they want to do us. It becomes very personal, right? And what ends up happening is everything gets skewed. You start seeing things very, very wrong. You get a little more aggressive about it. You start taking things personally, insulting. Now you're defending yourself. Now you're being called and painted out as this person that you are not. And now you're fighting back. Like, how could you do this? Because in your mind, I have been here helping you. I've done all these things. How could you say these things? How could you believe these things about me, right? But the thing about it is, what love does, what love is, and what true good is trusting that whatever is going on, that individuals have the free will choice, and giving them the freedom and allowing them to decide how and when they learn their lessons, when they come understanding, being humble enough to understand what you as another person, what your capacity is to bring change. I mean, if you think about how difficult it is to change yourself, to get through your self-deception, to come to better understanding about yourself and changing your life, right? Everybody's engaged in that process, and if you understand how difficult that can be and challenging that can be, imagine how much more difficult it is to do that same for somebody else, right? And you know everything going on in you. You have the knowledge of your past and life experience, right? It's very difficult. So being humble enough to understand that what I can do is go and speak a truth to you in love. I can speak it to you and share what, my perception or my understanding, but it's not my responsibility, my decision, or my role as to whether you believe it, as to whether or not you hear, as to whether or not you take that and choose to do something with it, right? Which is why being good is when you allow somebody the freedom to make decisions for themselves, to live freely in the truth that they are, and to be able to back away and not take it personally, and not take it personally, see as a personal insult or some personal slight against you, and allowing them the freedom to decide and to choose and to live in the way that they so choose, right? That's really what good is. And I think that's really the thing that's missing. That's the part that people don't understand, where you see it as bad when you give up on somebody. It's not at all what it is. It's not at all what it is. Loving somebody a lot of times is being able to let go, and letting go in love, meaning letting go with the understanding that, you know what, there's a reason why this person is not able to hear me or perceive what I'm saying right now. It has nothing to do with me. Almost always, the reason why somebody cannot perceive and hear is because it is so repressed. There is something, it brings up something in them that they are just not, they don't have the knowledge, or they don't have the ability at that point in time to deal with it appropriately and successfully, right? And what tends to happen is, what I've done before is I have continued and been so hard about it and just keep saying it. And what ends up happening is, if you pry somebody's eyes open like that, sometimes they're not ready to see what it is. And what you end up doing is causing a greater issue, causing them to spin into a cycle of greater self-destruction, because you have forced something up. You've been prying so hard that now it's there for them to deal with, and they weren't ready, right? And so when you look at it in that context, it becomes very easy to see that that's when you see the outcome at the end, like I have, right? It's not good. You realize what you did wasn't good, right? And it wasn't really love, right? And that's such an important thing. It's such an important thing to understand, is that love, unconditional love, means allowing somebody to be who they are, not repainting them with the colors of the potential you see them as, that the person you know they can be, not repainting who they are with those colors, and seeing them for who they are in that moment, allowing them to be in that moment, and then adjusting yourself to where they are at that point. And that's where boundaries come in, and it's so huge, right? So being able to love somebody, being able to want something so bad, being able to even want to be in a relationship with somebody so bad because you love them. The highest form of love is being able to realize that this individual is just not ready. They're not ready yet. It doesn't matter why. The most loving thing I can do is to back away, to let go and allow them the freedom to be, to do, to choose, to live in the truth they believe, and trusting that the universe works as it's worked for me, as it's worked for people. It works the same for everybody, right? It works the same for everybody. So, I just wanted to jump on here, my first little school of hard knocks. It's a tough one. It's a very tough one, but if you can get that one down, if you can understand, like the quote says, the quote, that last part of the quote was like, sometimes, the negative karma, bad karma you receive, just the shit that doesn't feel good, the consequences that suck, right? Sometimes it's not about you having bad intentions. Sometimes it's not about it. A lot of times it has nothing to do with a reflection of you as a bad person. A lot of times the reason why is because there's just a lack of understanding of what true good, how true good moves, what true love does. And it's that keeps you in a situation that you shouldn't be in. That you shouldn't be in, right? And so being able to back away in love and let it go without being personally slighted, without feeling like you've been wrong by that person, or they didn't hear you because they don't love you, or they don't, everybody has shit. Everybody has stuff within them they are dealing with. They have unhealed wound, repressed traumas. There's stuff going on that they have it's just not time. It's just not come to the surface. And allowing people to experience things the way they need to experience, and trusting that the same way it happened for you, the same way you learned the lesson in the past, the same way it happened for you will happen for them, right? And being able to do it without being angry, without holding a grudge, right? Without hating them for it. Because I'm telling you, it is the worst feeling in the world to be sitting there having the realization that the person that you loved and tried and thought you were fighting so hard for to help, they hate you. They don't even see you anymore. When they look at you, they see the memories and the emotion. They see everybody that came before you that triggered the emotions that made them feel the way you speaking the truth makes them feel, right? So this is like a big nugget. This is kind of a big one, a heavy one to go in with my first little, lessons from the School of Hard Knocks. But I was reminded of this lesson very recently. And so between that and then seeing the quote, I just knew, you know what? This is a great first lesson. So anywho, I will be back with you guys soon. I hope you have a brilliant remainder to your day. Thanks.